So I'd like to introduce you to Ariel Ein-Gal, who was directly impacted by the terror atrocity of October 7th. Ariel, I want to begin by just opening the floor to you, giving you the space really just to tell us your story. If you could tell us a bit of background to who you are and kind of the build up to that day as well. And then I'll ask you a couple of questions, then I'll open it out to all of you. But Ariel, please go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Ariel. I'm 27 years old. I'm originally from the north, from Nahariya, which is right next to the Lebanon border. And for the past 5 years, I'm living in Beersheba, which is in the south part of Israel. And I live there because I studied there. Studied computer science and linguistics, about to finish. And I also used to work at a student pub there, who called them Mileva, and I was a bartender there. And for almost 6 months, me and my friends, we tried to find a day to have a party for all the staff members, to have a night for ourselves. And after a lot of consideration, we decided to go on October 6th, and the location we chose was Zikim Beach. For those of you who doesn't know, Zikim is the closest beach to Gaza. So we went there at a Friday night, the 6th of October, around 6-7 p.m. and we made camp there, and we came there around 20 people, and it was amazing night, really. We had a lot of fun. We brought everything with us. We brought lights, we brought food, alcohol, even a DJ to make it an official party. And we stayed awake until like 6 a.m. partying. And at 6 we decided to close the music and go to sleep. And at 6:29 we woke up to sounds of sirens and alarms. And I remember myself waking up and looking and seeing like everyone is running, and I'm looking at the Gaza Strip like right in front of me, and I'm seeing a lot of launching, like nothing I've never seen before. And I'm looking at the horizon, like to the east, and I'm seeing at the sky all the interceptions of the Iron Dome, of the rockets. And it was also a crazy thing to see. A lot of rockets. I never seen anything like it before. And we made camp between two shipping containers that was tossed on the shore. The fishermen that lives there using that as to store their gear. And they are placed like one parallel to the other. And when the alarms went off, we went between them to hide. And we felt kind of safe there. I mean, now I can tell you that if a rocket would come from the side or from top, there was nothing that will stop it. But in those times, there is even videos that my friends took that you can see like me and my friends just walking there, talking to each other, making jokes. And after 15 minutes like this, that we're just looking at the interceptions and trying to understand what's going on, 3 boats came at our directions. And I remember myself looking at the boats and like, don't understand really what I'm seeing. I thought maybe it was the Navy, maybe it was rescue forces, I didn't know what. And then they started to fire at us from the sea. 3 boats, a lot of fire, and we shouted to each other, "It's terrorists, run!" And the beach in Israel is to the west, so we just ran as east as we could for almost a kilometer until we got to Zikim military base. Our timing was very good in those minutes, because 1 minute after we left the shore, the terrorists mounted Zikim and killed everyone that was there. The news says it's around 40 people. And they killed everyone there. They killed fishermen, father and sons that coming to this beach to fish for like 40 years. They killed them both. They killed 17-year-old kids that came to the beach to surf. They're living in a nearby village. And they even killed a 17-year-old couple who came to this beach to celebrate the first love. They were so shy about it that they didn't even tell their parents that. They only found out about it when they found their bodies. So we were very lucky that we managed to get out of there in time. So we got into the base and we asked, and we went to the gate, and there was a soldier guarding there, and we asked her to let us in. And she said that she couldn't. So we found ourselves just standing on the road, don't know what to do. And suddenly, like, I don't know from where, but someone started to shoot at the road next to us. Like, I remember myself looking next to my leg and I'm seeing like a bullet hitting the road and jumping. And I'm shouting to my friends, like, did anyone see where it's coming from? And one of my friends got it all together and he shouted, "It's snipers, get to the bushes." So we went inside the bushes and waited there for like 10 minutes, lying on the ground with our hands on our head, and bullets flying right above our heads. We hear the whistles of them, and all I could think of is that the next bullet is gonna be to my head, and that's it. And after 10 minutes, she got approval to let us in. So she called us and we ran into the base, and right maybe 3 or 4 meters after the entrance of the base, there was a bomb shelter. So we went inside and the soldier went in with us, and that's where I started to like ask her, like, who are you, how old are you, how long you're in the army. And she told me that she's 18 years old. She's just 1 month into the army. So I completely understood her in that second, like why she didn't let us in. Because it's not her call. Like, if I was her, 1 month into the army, you don't know anything. You wake up to the worst day in the history of this country, and I didn't expect her to act on her own. So when her commander told her not to let us in, I completely understood it. And I also understood that because she's new and she don't have the qualification yet, she shot maybe 4 rounds until then, I took her gun and I went outside the shelter to guard my friends. And the absurd thing about it is that when I went out, I started to run some scenarios in my head, and I remembered, like, I was a combat commander in the army, so I know how to use a gun, but I didn't touch a gun for like 6 years now. So in those scenarios that I ran in my head, I remembered that there are cases when you shoot and the gun jams, and you have like 2 ways to fix it, and I didn't remember it. So the absurd thing was that I'm standing outside the bomb shelter, like from everywhere you hear gunshots and rockets falling, and I'm like in Google looking for how to fix a jam F-16. So it was kind of funny. And I was just praying and hoping that I won't have to use it. That was like the only thing I could think of. And in this time, we tried to call everyone. We tried to call the police, we tried to call the ambulances, the firefighters, the army, everyone, but no one picked up because everyone was so occupied with their own. I mean, I called the police in the road, but in those moments, it was occupied by Hamas terrorists. So no one could help us, and in those moments when we stood there, we felt like, I felt at least personally that we're gonna die here, no doubt about it. No one is coming for us, and no one even knows that we're here. And after about 40 minutes, a squad came in, an IDF officer, which his name was Yanai Kaminka, and 2 commanders. Yanai came and he told one of the commanders to take the rookie, the novice that was guarding, to hide there with all the other rookies. And Yanai gathered us together and he started to brief us. He went over to go over scenarios with him, like if the terrorist will come from here, he will run to there. If the soldier will die, you will take his weapon, and if you will die, then he will take his weapon, and like that. He made things organized for us. So in those minutes when we spoke, I really felt like for the first time that day that someone knows that we're here, and that we might be okay after all, that the army is finally here. And when those 10 minutes passed, he ran back to the fight to help his friends, and he lost his life there alongside with his friends. You have to understand, in those moments, what happened in the base was really, I still can't explain it. I mean, we didn't know it at the second, but the situation was that we were in one side of the base, and from the other side of the base, around 100 terrorists tried to conquer it, and they faced only 14 staff members that had to hide their 80 rookies that in training, only 1 month in the army. Also protect a Jewish family of 8 people that came yesterday to Zikim to help to celebrate with them Simchat Torah. And 20 people that they don't even know that they need to protect. So he had to leave us because he couldn't be on the other side while his friends are fighting and dying. So we went there to help him. And they lost, they killed all 100 terrorists that came, and they lost 7 of the staff members and 1 of the novices. Which is, by the way, one of the most heroic fights I've ever, not experienced, but ever heard of. And I'm sure they will learn about it in every military academy in the world. So when he left us, we stayed with one of his commanders, which is a pretty impressive guy from the Druze community. And he stayed there with the gun, saving us for about, I think, almost 2 hours. And in those 2 hours, we sat inside the base, inside the bomb shelter, knowing that we're front line to the sea. Like, if all the terrorists we saw from the sea are gonna attack the base, for sure this is where they're gonna attack for. Like 100%. This is the gate that's close to the sea. So, and we're realizing that, like, way before. So imagine us just sitting there for an hour and a half, knowing that they should come any second now. And all you could do, and the only thing you could do is just go outside the bomb shelter, stand beside the soldier, and just look for yourself to the bushes. Maybe find the terrorist before him. And this is what we did. This is what me and my friends, some of us did. And in those hour and a half, I really had the time to think about what's going to happen and what's going on here. And I really accepted my death, which is very sound to say. But in those moments, to be able to focus and to be able to do something, to think, I had to accept it. I had to accept that that's it, that I'm going to die here. Told myself that I had a good life, I have no regrets, and that's it. And the crazy part is that I really, really accepted it. Now I can tell you that I'm definitely not ready to die, but in those moments, I just accepted it. And as long as the time passed, the gunshots and the fighting got closer to us. We heard it from west, from east, from north, from south. We heard it from everywhere, and it just kept getting closer as the time passed. And at some point, when the sounds were getting too close, we decided that we can't stay there anymore, and we decided that we're getting out of there. So we divided ourselves into cars, and we ran outside to get out of there. Now, I was in the car with the DJ of the party, one of the cooks, and 2 Bedouin friends. The Bedouins are a Muslim minority that lives in the south. One of them is working with us, he's a friend, and the other one is his friends. They both were with us the whole night. So they were in the front, I was in the back, in the middle, and they were on the sides, and we went on our way. And none of us has ever been near Gaza, not near Gaza Strip, not even in Sderot. So we asked Waze to take us home. And when we entered our destination, Beersheba, in Waze, he showed us that the road that we came from is blocked. I guess by then the police already managed to to contact them and made them like block all the roads that were filled with terrorists. So Waze showed us some detour. He showed us a course through the agriculture fields. So we listened to him and we drove. And for like 15 minutes. And at some point, we are realizing that for the last 5 minutes, we're driving alongside the Gazan border, and which is the last place you want to be right now. So we panicked immediately and screamed the driver to turn around and go back, and he did it. So we went back those 15 minutes, and it wasn't a regular drive. Like when you drive those fields, you hear a lot of gunshots, you hear people screaming, girls, you hear shouts in Arabic, you hear grenades exploding. Like every turn that you take there, you think that you might encounter terrorists, and that's gonna be it. So those 15 minutes there and 15 minutes back was really crazy. Every car that was stopped on the way, you think it might be terrorist. So we drove back those 15 minutes, scared as hell. And then we got into intersection when we had to choose whether we take left back to the base or whether we take right to the exit that Waze said it was blocked. And we decided that we can't go back there no matter what. And we took a right to the exit. And we started driving. And the driver that was with us was driving super fast. And at some point, I'm seeing from a distance police cars. 2 big Savannas with the lights on, facing us, with one door open towards the road. So when I'm seeing it from distance, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is police officers. They're barricading themselves, preparing themselves to contact. So what we need to do is to slow down and make them understand that we're Jewish and we're Israelis, so they won't shoot us. So we're starting to shout at our driver to slow down. We're telling him that he needs to slow down now or we will die by friendly fire. This is no doubt. And he just kept accelerating. And imagine that we're driving in like 2019 Skoda Octavia, all black with tattoos on the side, with 2 big Bedouins on the front, on like, I'm telling you, I think 100 miles. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I was a police officer and I'm seeing that thing flying towards me, I will just shoot it. Like, no alarms, no alerts, no shooting in the air, just shoot it on the spot. So we're shouting at him, please stop the car. And he didn't really understand Hebrew that good, and he was so in such a stress that he just kept accelerating. And when we got closer, we saw a dead body lying on the ground of a police officer. And I remember myself thinking, like, what should we do? Should we just drive? Should we stop to help him? Or just maybe he's dead and we can just take his gun so we won't be alone? And I wasn't able to finish the thought because the dead body woke up holding an AK-47 and they started shooting at us with his friends from the sides, and they shot at us at close range, 3 terrorists, and we understood it. We realized that we're in the middle of Hamas ambush. And the driver shouts at us, lower your heads, lower your heads. And I remember myself lowering my head, just not looking at anything, just putting my hands on my head and getting my head down. And as I told you before, I sat on the middle before, like in the back, in the middle. So this was the worst place to sit on. And I remember that at some point, like after 3 or 4 seconds, suddenly the shooting stopped. And I remember myself just like peeking just a little bit, just to see what's going on and if we passed them already. And in this exact moment, a bullet came right straight from the windshield, like I saw it crack, and it flew right next to my ear, and it was crazy. I thought that I'm dead. Like I thought that that's it, that I got shot somewhere and I just don't know that, and it's like in the movies. So I started to feel myself. Like I felt myself a lot. Like even when we got out of there, I still felt myself all the way until I got home. Only when I was home with my girlfriend, that was the second that I was sure that I'm not gonna die, and I stopped like looking for the bullet holes. And we managed to, because we were so fast, we managed to bypass the terrorists and just keep driving until we got into a real police barricade. And one of my friends got hit in the shoulder, just between the shoulder and the back, and we managed to evacuate her on time to the hospital. And we also managed to call our other friends and tell them to get back. And most of them did. Some of them were, some of my friends, we were the second car that went out. So the first car experienced just what we experienced. They went to the agriculture fields and then came back, and then they drove right through the ambush. And they were a little less lucky. One of my friends got hit in the leg by a bullet, and they also managed to bypass the terrorists and kept driving. But the problem was that some of the bullet hit the oil tank, so after a few hundred meters, the car just started to catch fire and broke down in the middle. So they had to ditch it and just jump to the next bush they could find, while my friend is bleeding. And they went out of the car and they saw like some broken buildings for I don't know for what is it. Didn't even have a roof, just 4 walls. So they went inside and they tried to stop his bleeding without succeeding that much. And they stayed there for like 30 minutes, trying to call MADA, trying to call the ambulances, but no one picks up. And of course, what ambulance can come to this zone right now with terrorists? But they tried anyway. And at some point, a car just drove in the road. So my friend, the one who got shot, jumped on one leg and just jumped to the road and screamed at them that they need help. And luckily for him, it was Maglan, which is an elite special unit from Israel. So they took them in and they bandaged him, they gave him an artery block, and then they took him to the ambulances. So they were okay too. And my friends, the one who got warned and managed to get back, they stayed there for another 8 hours in the same bomb shelter at the beginning, just waiting for them to come from the sea. And imagine staying there for another 8 hours. Like everything I just told you now, from the second I woke up until we encountered a terrorist, talking about roughly 3.5 hours. So imagine going through that and then waiting another 8 hours, just waiting for your death, while trying to get contact with your family, and the phones are dying at some point. And they didn't know that someone is coming to get them until someone came to get them. They just spent the next 8 hours like that, which is just crazy. So eventually 20 of us got home, and this is beyond miracle. I mean, we got ourselves right in the middle of the mess where it all began, and somehow we managed to get home together, the whole group, which I'll be thankful for it until the day I die. But our miracle was not complete, because we had another friend with us in the party. We were 21 total. Her name was Mor Gabai. Mor was she was the pub sweetheart, let's call her. She was one of my best friends, and she was one of a kind woman, the one you see every once in a generation. Like she had time to do everything in the most crazy way. So like she was working every day at 7 a.m. going to work as secretary, then comes back at 2 p.m. to feed and walk her dogs, 2 dogs and 8 puppies. And with all of that, she had time to make herself lunch and also invite a student or two from her building that was just studying and didn't have the time to cook, so she cooks for them. And after all of that, to be at around 5 or 6 p.m. at the bar to start a shift until 1 a.m. and then wakes up again at 6 to go to be a secretary at 7. So she made all of that, and in all of that, she also had a time to send us, me and her best friends, like every day a message: how are you? Do you want to come? Do you want to come smoke a cigarette? what are you doing today? Wanna hang out? So this is who she was. And she was with us the whole night. She partied with us until 6 a.m. And when we decided to close the music and go to sleep, she decided to go to her mother, who lives in a nearby village. So she left the party, and on the road, the alarms went off, and she is a southern girl, so she knew exactly what to do. She stopped the car, she went to the nearest shelter she could find, she waited there, and after around 10 minutes, she went out, back to the road, and again, alarms caught her on the way, so she stopped in a gas station. And when she got out of there, she didn't know, but the road was already filled with hundreds of terrorists. And she was driving right towards them. And they caught her on the way and they killed her. And we didn't even know, like when she called me in the morning to warn me, right before the boats came, she called me to warn me. She was already in the gas station. And I didn't even understand it. I thought that she's calling me from home. Only around 4 p.m. a friend called me and told me that she's missing, she didn't come home. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you for listening.
Ariel, thank you so much for sharing your testimony of what happened to you on that day, for sharing your heart to us. And we were just chatting before that this can't be easy, you know, having to share this story over and over again. And I want to ask you a few questions about, you know, what's happened since and what your focus now is moving forward. The first thing is just for you personally, what would you say are some of like the key like headline things in your own life that's changed as a result of what happened to you that day?
It's a good question. I think the most valuable thing I learned this year is the value of proportions. My girlfriend was supposed to join me that day, and we had a big fight before, like so big really, and it was so stupid fight that I don't even remember on what it was. Really, I can't. I'm sure that she can remember too, and she remembers everything. And instead of fixing it, or at least saying goodbye like two human beings, I just stormed out and went to the beach like that. And when I was there, sitting, waiting for my death in this bomb shelter, I thought a lot about this moment, and it just killed me to think that the last time that we saw each other was like that. So when I got home, when I got home, we didn't even talk about it, and since then we learned, I think both of us learned the value of proportion, knowing what's important and what's not, and what's worth fighting, and especially not storming out after a fight.
And for a lot of your friends, we were speaking a bit before about, you know, how the Israeli youth, young people, their perceptions, views have shifted in the aftermath of October 7th, many of them. What is your general perception of what's happening, to what the impact is on all young people across Israel in the aftermath of this, you know, October 7th in particular, as so much of the attack was on, you know, young people at a festival?
I think the young people are filled with anger. I think this is what motivates them. I mean, I see at least in my environment, let's call it, I see a lot of people that belong to the left wing and shifted right after October 7th. And I think most of the shifting that I see really comes from a place of anger, place of betrayal. They felt like the people they believe that they can make peace with did that to them, so they can't trust them anymore. But I also believe that that this anger will pass eventually. I mean, when I think about those things and like trying to think how it's gonna look like, the best thing I can do is look at the history, look what happened. And I read a lot about Yom Kippur War and how it affected the people afterwards when they felt also that disaster that came on them. And at first there was a lot of anger, but eventually people moved on. And look, 20 years after, there was a peace with Arafat. So, I don't know.
And on a more personal level, how often how often is it taking up space in your mind? What happened to you on that day? Are you able to live your life and move forward? How much does this experience, is it always there in the back of your mind or front of your mind?
It's always there, no doubt about it. It depends on what period of time you ask me, because when it all happened, of course, it was on the top of my thought, and I always thought about it and tried to learn more information about it, more details of the things I don't know about it. But and of course, I was also doing what I'm doing here. I did it also in the United States, in California. I went to the Jewish community and other communities and told my story.
My next question was actually going to be about what it is that you say to people, your messages to people. So maybe you can link it into that. You're going around to, the whole week has been completely jam-packed, speaking to people, various organizations, students. You've gone to America. Just my last question to you before we take it to the audience is, what's been your impression of, first of all, the Western world's reaction to what's happened to October 7th and the aftermath, and how they've reacted to Israel defending herself? And also, what's your message when you speak to people in the wider world, Jews and non-Jews? What's like your key message that you try to get across to people?
It's two questions.
Two questions, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the first. I was really surprised actually to see all the reactions from the world, like countries and government that you thought that they're gonna stand with you no matter what in front of this threat. I mean,
it was surprising, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was shocking.
Definitely surprising. And for your second question, I think that my main message here is that I came here and I thought about it a lot, like if I want to spend October 7th here or with my family, and I realized that I have to be here and send out this message that we don't have the privilege not to be united right now. I mean, all you have to do is look at the other side and see how organized they are and how the flawless propaganda works, and look how it shifted like most of the world, and it's crazy. And when you see that, I think that we have to be united, that we have to use the power of the Jewish community. I've seen it in Israel, and I've seen it in the US, and I've seen amazing things, and I've seen the power of this community, and it's something that we need to keep doing, because this is what made us survive until now, I think, as Jewish people, through all our history.
Absolutely. I actually remember hearing a few months ago one of the hostages that managed to be released, and she understood Arabic, and she overheard one of the terrorists, Hamas terrorists, saying to one of his terrorist friends a few days after October 7th, when she was being held hostage. They were watching the news, they were seeing the reservists lining up on the news and Israelis coming together, uniting, and she heard him say to his fellow terrorists that he said, "Boy, these Jews are scary when they're united." And I think certainly if we think about where Israel was in the days and weeks and months prior to October 7th, the internal strife and infighting, that surely has to be the call of the hour, doesn't it? The importance of us all being totally united and together in common purpose. I want to open it out to the audience now.
Feel free to ask anything.
Thank you for sharing. Amazing. recollection and experience. Could you just describe what goes in your mind when you're faced at the point of realizing you're not going to survive?
Yeah, I can. I thought like with myself, I thought like, should I write goodbye letter to my parents and my girlfriend? Should I not? And I thought about it a lot, and I realized in those moments that I rather not do it. It just occurred to me that if I'm gonna live, if I'm gonna survive this, then I just gave them a heart attack for no reason. And if I'm gonna die, which is what probably gonna happen, at least they have few more hours without knowing that. And besides that, it's just convincing yourself that this is the only possible, that this is the outcome and you have nothing to do with it. And when I got filled with fear about this is gonna happen, I realized that accepting it is the only way for me to be able to think about the next steps. Because if I let the fear get me, I would just sit frightened. And I didn't want it. I wanted to go back home, and I thought to myself like, what is the thing that I need to do to make it happen? To be home in a few hours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We all know that it took an extraordinarily long time for you to get help, as you said, and there's been a lot of questions, I think, in Israel and around the world about why that was the case. Having gone through it yourself, having suffered for those hours and hours, and not having had answers as yet, what's your feeling, what's the other survivors' feeling about what happened that day, why there was such a delay, and how the country can ever sort of come back from that?
It's a good question. I felt, at first, I felt abandoned, felt betrayed. I felt like they left us to die, and there was no point in time that I thought that it was on purpose and someone organized it. Never. I never thought that. But I did feel like they were letting me down, and I felt like, how can we not see it? Like, it happened exactly 50 years ago plus day. How can we not see it happen? And this feeling drove me crazy. It really made me so angry. And as long as the time passed and I heard more stories and more testimonies, I realized how big it was, that I can't blame the soldiers that was on the field, the people that were fighting. I could never do that. There is questions that need to be asked, like, why didn't anyone know that? Didn't anyone alerted about it? Where were the forces? The questions definitely need to be answered. And I truly believe in 100% that whether it will be answered now or after the war, as Bibi wants, we will know the truth eventually. And right now we need to focus on the war. This is my perspective, because we also have Lebanon now, which is also important to get almost 70,000 Israelis back to their homes, including my friends. I'm living right there. All of the evacuated are my friends. All my friends are evacuated. And we also have Iran, who will know what happened like any day now. So we need to be focused on that, but I'm sure, 100% sure, that we will know the truth.
Thanks so much for everything you've said tonight. It's incredibly impactful. One of the things, I guess, is very hard right now. You must have a number of friends who are on the front line and have been called up into Lebanon, those that have served time in Gaza, taking on a war which is incomprehensible, particularly because of the way in which the conditions, the terror tunnels, booby traps. Do you speak very much with your friends? Do they share their current stories with you?
Yeah, and I think the awareness of the mental health really rose since the beginning of the war, and I see that the army and is offering like mental help for its soldiers, and I'm seeing like a lot of volunteering, a lot of private psychologists and organizations that voluntarily helping soldiers to process what they're doing, which I think is amazing.
Where do you think we will be in like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now? And is that the same as what you'd like it to be in 1 year, 3 years and 5 years from now?
I can't really tell you where we will be, but I really hope that by this end of this year the wars will be finally over, and all my friends and everyone will go back to their houses, and we will be able to rebuild this country, because we have to. I mean, I really don't know. I just hope that the war will be over in a year from now. Can't really know. Like, if you ask me last week, I would tell you definitely not. Ask me now, I'm telling you I don't know. Maybe next week I'll tell you that I know. It changes all the time. For me, at least.
Further ahead, 3 years, 5 years?
I'm seeing everyone coming back to their homes, and I'm seeing us rebuilding our economy. And hopefully having like a normalization with Saudi Arabia or something like that.
Amen. Any other question?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I was thinking about your bravery in coming and doing what you're doing, and I was wondering what support that you've got. You mentioned some of the soldiers having psychological support, and I was hoping that you were also given support.
Yeah, I used to go to a psychologist that helped me a lot. Right now I'm not going to therapy, but it changes. So I'm taken care of, that's for sure. I also got from the state, I got like around 60 free shrink therapies. So.
Wow.
I was just wondering, after you left the base, do you know what happened to the base? Were there people still left there?
Yeah, I know that out of 14 staff members, 7 died. And out of all the rookies, 1 died. And the rest of them are okay, including the family. And including the kibbutz that was nearby, including Ashkelon and the power plant that was nearby. They saved a lot of people that day. A lot, not just us.
Amazing.
I think, by the way, that's the thing as well that's missed. A lot of people ask, you know, where were the IDF? What happened that day? There was a huge amount of heroism, a huge amount of things, you know, saving the day. If you think about it, by the way, 4,000 Hamas terrorists penetrated the border. Now, of course, we're all mourning and still grieving the tragedy of 1,200 killed, several hundred taken hostage. But if you think about it, and I've spoken to military experts, the actual casualties you'd expect from those numbers, 4,000. Think about each terrorist would be able to. It'd actually be close to 10. You'd expect close to 10,000. So I think that's also worth bearing in mind. It's a bit of a miracle actually how it was, what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. You talked about how you fell back on some of your basic training from when you were in the army. Is that been important amongst your friends of still respect that sort of experience that you had there, and the view of the youth still wanting to do that national service?
Definitely. I know from the news that the percentage of combat soldiers that is being recruited is risen since the beginning of the war. People understand that it's fight for our home. It's not something else. It's something for either you win or either you die. This is the options.
It's just a simple question. How are your friends now, the 20 that went and parted? How are you getting on with them? How has it changed your relationship with them? How are they doing? They're
okay. Everyone is doing his own process in its own way. And I'm seeing them, some of us are closer together, some of us now. But I got a chance to talk to most of them recently. And it seems like they're moving on. seems like it's hard for all of us, no doubt. Some of us like to talk about it, like me. Some of us like to bury it behind. But overall, when I'm looking at them, I'm seeing how they're moving on. I mean, I think 6 or 7 of them went back to work at the bar 2 weeks after it happened. Yeah. So yeah, they're strong people, and I'm sure they will be okay.
Hi, Ariel. I think you were stunned almost into silence when you were asked about how you saw the world's reaction. If you had the chance to, say, theoretically speak to somebody university educated who marched in support of Hamas or Hezbollah that was sat opposite you, what would you say to them?
I can tell you from my personal experience is when I talk to people who were not Jewish and didn't actually support us. I'm not talking about the fanatics, those are beyond repairing. I'm talking about the people that may be looking at the numbers and seeing the death at their side, which is much higher, and they're taking their side, but they're still convincible. So what worked for me with these people is just telling them my story from a personal perspective. I didn't tell, like even what I told you today, I didn't tell it from a political view, or I didn't tell you like who conquered who before and stuff like that. I think that most people, especially non-Jewish, this is not something that's so relevant to them because they don't really care. Something that happened long time ago in a far, far away, and it doesn't concern them. I think that at least what works for me, telling them my story from a personal perspective and making them emphasizing with it, making them feel like it could happen to them. This is what makes it work. I can give you a little example. When I was once in the US and I talked to a group of mothers and fathers, like a group of parents from some school, and most of them weren't Jewish. When I mentioned Nova, I compared it to Coachella. And you should see the look at their face when they're realizing, when they know they just sent their daughter a month ago to Coachella, and now they're understanding that you could be their daughter, their reaction is way different. So I think that going in that way, just making them see that we were just a couple of civilian students that went to made camp at the beach. That's it. They killed a lot of Bedouins also. Killed a lot of foreign workers, from Thailand, from Vietnam.
Yeah, it's truly indiscriminate. It's just the only aim was to try and decimate the Jewish state. Yeah.
So again, I was just very struck by the tattoo that you showed me on Sunday. I just thought other people might want to see that.
Yeah. So I made this tattoo. It says, stand up. It says 20 out of 21. I did it to memorize more my friend. I did it here because it reminds me the numbers from Auschwitz. And this is my way of saying that never again is now. And this is my way of never forgetting what happened and never forgetting what happened to more. She should have been with us right now. And so yeah, this is for her.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, well, in that case, I think we're probably gonna wrap up. The last question I'd ask you before doing that, it'd be just for us to like a take-home message. What would you say? You know, we're often encountering people who are hostile to Israel, hostile to Israel's fight against Hamas and Hezbollah. You know, especially in the Western world, in media, politics. What would be something you would say should be a message we should always be conveying to people as we have these conversations?
To what you're saying, like to non-Jews?
Yeah. When people genuinely trying to understand the situation in Israel better, understand October 7th, what Israel's doing now, what do you feel is something really important that we can convey to them?
I think what I've said before, make them sympathize. Make them understand it could have been them. This is what works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Personalize it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ariel, thank you so much for sharing with us your testimony and for telling us your story. It's so greatly appreciated. We were just saying yesterday, as we were marking the first anniversary of October 7th, that it's it's of course a time to pause and grieve, but really the truth is we've been grieving every day for the last year. And I heard my rabbi actually say to me in a talk he gave recently, I think an important insight, which was that the story of Hanukkah, the festival of Hanukkah, is about the Jews facing Greek invaders and this imperial empire that's trying to conquer the land. And despite all the odds, the Maccabees, who were totally outnumbered, were able to push off this enemy and re-establish sovereignty, and you had the miracle of the menorah. And so there was this miracle where they were able to survive, but on the other hand, they did actually suffer casualties as well, and they felt that it's not really appropriate to be able to acknowledge some of these miracles and these successes while we're still grieving. But once they hit the first anniversary, they did establish this. They didn't establish Hanukkah immediately afterwards. It's after a year they established it. And now, once there was a bit more of breathing space following the grief as well, they could also acknowledge the light as well. And so I feel an important way to end this as well, as acknowledging and feeling the darkness of what we went through, is also to acknowledge the light of Ariel and his bravery and his courage to be able to stand before all of us and tell his story. The light of the resilience of the people of Israel, who in the aftermath rallied together, united, really stood up together and showed just an incredible amount of unity and sacrifice, and also acknowledge that the remarkable miracles that we've seen that's taken place. The fact that, as I said, it was 4,000 terrorists. One would expect a lot more damage. The fact that Iran, just a few days ago, were sending hundreds of missiles, and the ones that weren't intercepted fall into open fields or buildings that were empty. We have no casualties, and we just said, oh, well, yeah, well, that's what happens. No, it's not what happens. And we just kind of almost don't, because it just seems to happen like it did in April, we just kind of say, oh, well, okay, that's done. The fact that with Lebanon, yes, we have no idea what tomorrow brings, and yes, we have suffered casualties, but we were told by every military expert, basically, that in order to really degrade Hezbollah, it's going to be a deeply bloody war that on both sides there will be a huge amount of civilian casualties, and with the pager attacks that was just like out of a movie, and the walkie-talkie thing. Again, we don't know what tomorrow brings, but how Israel's totally turned the tables, getting Hania in Tehran. I mean, there's been a lot of light as well as a lot of darkness. And so I think it's important that we also now take the time to see that as well as we move forward. And, that I think really has always been the story of the Jewish people. We've faced this intense darkness, and we just, for some reason, there's something about our destiny as a people that we're able to just push back with an even greater amount of light. So as we go forward and continue to stand up for Israel and the Jewish people, let's all take strength in Ariel and Israel and what we're seeing happening before our eyes. So thank you to everyone for coming, and appreciate it.